Hello, Bernie Wall here. If you don't know me or haven't seen my videos before, then I am an IELTS trainer specializing in working with students who need bands 7 and 8 in their IELTS. And in this short video today, I want to address something in IELTS reading, which often causes students problems. And that is trusting your instinct and using common sense. Because quite often by not doing those two things, then you can get some very strange answers. I remember a few years ago, I was working with a student and she was having lots of problems with headings in the reading. And every time she sent her answers to me, her headings were all incorrect. And when we went through them together, she told me that she had actually had the right answers the first time, but then she'd gone back and checked them all and she changed them and her second answers were all incorrect. And after trusting her instinct and stopping this process of changing, she then found that every time she did the headings questions, she got everything right. So sometimes you have to step back and trust your instinct and your common sense. And that's what I want to look at today. Some reasons why students don't do this and what the consequences of not doing this can be. So I'll just share my screen with you and we'll look at a few examples. So it's what I call silly errors, because actually when I go through the reading with students, they'll immediately say, I thought it was that. And when I say, well, why didn't you pick it? They said, it was too easy, or it seemed too obvious. And really, if it's easy and obvious, then it's probably likely to be the right answer. So don't always feel that the reading questions have to be hard. They don't. They'll be logical. Okay, so this is often what happens when you make these silly mistakes. So you do the reading, you choose all the answers. Then, before you check your answers, you go back and have a look at them. You have some doubts and you start to change them. And it's very easy to persuade yourself that something is wrong when it is right. Then when you check them, you get them all wrong, but you discover that your original answers before you change them were in fact all correct. And this is a typical scenario of people not trusting their instinct and common sense. So how can you be certain that your original ones were correct? Okay, you can't be 100%, but there are one or two things that might help you to stop making these silly errors. The first is to trust your instinct. Okay, and the best way of doing that is not to stick to narrow rules. I've mentioned these before in videos. So things, for example, which say all the questions are chronological. Why should they be? And they are not necessarily. So I found quite often students will miss an answer because they're on question 6 and they cannot believe that that question 6 might come before question 5 in the text. That's a narrow rule that will stop you finding a very obvious answer. So be open to anything. And use these things like skimming, scanning, keywords to help you find the answer, not arbitrary rules that you've picked up from somewhere. Don't overthink the answers. This is a really big problem in reading, where students keep going over the same question, and then you end up persuading yourself of an answer that's incorrect. If you work quickly and you do one question, 1 minute, you won't have time to overthink. So it's very important to keep moving and not keep going over and over the same question lots of times. When you go back to review, so if you do the one question, 1 minute, one question, you should have some time at the end. And when you go back, don't review everything, just review the ones that you're not sure about. If you're happy with your answers, then stick to them and just check those that you have doubts about. All of these things will stop you from changing correct answers. Okay, practice systematically. When you're doing your reading practice, try and notice what the text is. Try and notice what the questions are, because you'll be amazed that some of the same things come back over and over. So here's an example from texts about animals. So quite often, if I look at a text about animals, I'll see the word predator in the question or in the text. And I know that in the question or text, there's going to be something like enemy. I might see meat eater, and the synonym for that will be carnivore. So these words always come up when you're reading texts about animals: carnivore, herbivore, omnivore, predator. And you'll find, if you pay attention to the work you're doing, that you will start to build up a bank of these words that come up every time there's something on animals. Every time there's something on environment, there will be certain words that will come up again and again because they are fundamental to that topic. So when you're practicing, be aware of what you're reading and be aware of the questions that are being asked. Also, keep an open mind on the questions that you've chosen. So if you have a section with, say, 6 questions and you've made a choice for question 1 and 2, don't be 100% fixed on that question, because it may be wrong. So as you do the others, keep an open mind that you might have to move them around. This is particularly true in headings. If you pick your first heading and then you never look at that heading again, you might be wrong, and that heading may fit another paragraph. So while you're doing a particular section of questions, keep an open mind until you've got them all down, and then you can move on to the next section. So don't consider anything set in stone until you've done all of the questions in that section. That's another way of avoiding making silly errors and making your common sense paramount. Don't jump too quickly on a word you see, either in the text or in the question. And I've said over and over, if you've seen my videos and my articles before, that you should always have at least 3 keywords, and sometimes 4. And it's the coming together of those keywords that tells you that you're in the right place. So here's an example of one that some of my students recently had problems with. So this is part of the question, and the students were asked to complete the sentence here. And a lot of students picked devoted as their keyword, and they went to the text then to find synonyms for devoted. But devoted to them meant loyalty. Therefore, they were looking for something about loyalty. And that took them to anything about workers or customers. It was a business type text. And so they were looking for the bosses and the workers and the customers to see who was going to be loyal to these customers. Now, that's a danger of using just one keyword, because in fact here, it did not mean loyalty at all. And in fact, companies and hydrogen cars, which was the overall topic, were also keywords that needed to be chosen along with devoted. And by taking 3 keywords, then we find that actually devoted doesn't mean anything about loyalty in this instance. And car manufacturers, which is the same as companies, invested billions of dollars. So in fact, devoted was a synonym for invested. And therefore, the answer was nothing to do with customers or workers or bosses or managers. It was actually to do with money. and billions of dollars was the answer. But you can see, I think, how it's possible to go down a completely wrong route, because you pick one word instead of 2 or 3, and you make an assumption about the meaning of that word, which is actually wrong. And that will cost you a lot of time. So always be open to the fact that words in English have many different meanings. And also, do not just jump on one keyword. And finally, to stop this happening, if you can't find an answer, leave it and move on. Don't spend a long time, because that's how you start overthinking, how you start going down the wrong route. Just leave it and move to the next one. Come back later, and quite often when you come back and you feel fresher and you're not panicking, the answer will pop up quite easily. Keep an open mind, as I mentioned before. Don't, unless an answer is very, very obvious, which happens, don't set anything in stone until you've done all the questions in the section. If your instinct tells you something, don't ignore it. You're probably right. If you do a lot of practice and you've looked at a lot of text, you will have very good instincts about the questions and the text. So don't ignore it, explore it. And common sense can often give you the answer. And the thing that improves your instinct and improves your ability to trust your common sense is lots of active practice, where you're aware of questions and vocabulary and texts and how texts work. So practice, again, will make perfect in this instance. So I hope that by following those few steps, you will get to a place where you can trust your instinct so much better, and it will help you for sure to find the right answers. An article on this is again on my website with a little bit more detail, IELTSlearningtips.com, and you can also find a few free resources and other things there to help you with your practice. So thank you for watching this short video. I hope that that will help you with your reading preparation for IELTS, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thank you.